Hello, listeners. Jordan here. I just want to let you know that you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
Welcome to UFOs Above Canada, a nighttime podcast series exploring the people, the events, and the concepts that surround the Canadian UFO experience.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to UFOs Above Canada. In tonight's episode, UFO writer and researcher Chris Rutkowski and I are going to unpack a collection of the many Canadian UFO reports we received over the last 60 days. These reports, which were submitted by listeners via the reporting tool on nighttimepodcast.com, come from coast to coast and range from the mundane light in the sky to the fantastic life-altering encounter. Chris and I are going to do our best to understand each one of them. So let's get to it. Tonight, in this episode of Nighttime, Chris Rutkowski and I will discuss some recent Canadian UFO reports. Chris Rutkowski, glad you're able to make some time out of your busy book tour to join me here.
Yes, such as it is.
Yeah. It's kind of like the new version of a book tour. Given the state of the world, your book tour generally is happens on Facebook and stuff, I guess, nowadays.
Yeah. Anybody tune in and email or something. Yeah. I'm working on it. We'll work on a TikTok next time. Don't worry.
Yeah, or you'll ramp it up for the next book. Which, knowing how prolific you are with writing, that's probably next month. Last time you were on the show, we talked about the upcoming launch of Canadian UFOs Declassified. I think you were just about to launch it when you were on last time, or maybe it just went up for sale. Now it's been making the rounds. I've been seeing people sharing screenshot or posts about them reading it and everything else. How has the reaction been?
It's getting good response. The launch is coming up September 8th in Winnipeg. Ooh. And I think they're going to try and stream it online, so we'll be able to give you a link at one point.
Cool.
So we'll see what happens.
For people who've already got the book and have contacted you, what kind of responses are you getting from people?
They're saying they like it. A lot of them say they didn't know that Canada had been so involved in the UFO scene, and the government was investigating so much. And some of the cases are really mind-blowing. Some of the reports from pilots and RCMP officers and railroad engineers, and there's a lot of people who are in professional capacity who had seen things, and in some cases the government investigated quite thoroughly. And then of course it went into this period when the government sort of got a little bored with the whole thing, and I guess there's a renewed interest right now in trying to get the government again to take UFOs, or UAPs as they're calling them now, a little more seriously.
Very cool. Were you primarily or focused on Canadian UFO events? Do you ever see a connection between Tim Hortons and UFO sightings? Can you think of any cases that involve Tim Hortons at all? I'm just thinking if there were enough, that would be an amazing, book.
There were a couple of cases that happened at gas stations. Where people think that they had, seen something hovering over the gas station and then encountered beings and that type of thing.
Yeah, I guess a Tim Hortons generally is in a parking lot where there's probably enough light pollution or whatever that you can't really see the sky clearly.
Yeah, but no Tim Horton cases that come to mind anyway.
Okay. Well, there's plenty of time for them. If anyone out there sees a UFO near Tim Hortons.
Great marketing opportunity for Tim Hortons, though, when you think about it.
Yeah, Justin Bieber's going in to get his coffee. The Starlink passes by overhead, and he freaks out. He immediately goes to the UFOs Above Canada discussion group, posts a photo of it, and Chris Rutkowski, Canadian UFO author, debunks him in real time.
Yeah, Beeb, you're out of your mind.
Well, what I got for you tonight is, so this, but I get UFO reports sent often through my website, nighttimepodcast.com. There's a spot where you can report a UFO. The information goes to me and over on to you to include in the Canadian UFO survey that you put together each year. But there's also a spot in the reporting forum where they give me permission to share their sighting on air. I archive those sightings for every month or two when I talk to you to go through them and kind of try to figure out what may have happened. So I have a huge collection of UFO sightings over the last month or two. And I know this from you telling me this, but July and August are generally, or June, July, and August are generally pretty busy months for UFO reports, right? Like statistically, this would be kind of the busy
Statistically,
time of year.
yes. Yeah, statistically, yes. Yeah.
UFO investigators cannot get vacation time in the summer. Just the
Yeah.
demand is too high. But I got a lot of reports to go over. But before we do that, let's kind of talk about a couple Canadian UFO sort of news stories. First thing I want to talk about with you, this you were an attendee, I think 2 years ago at the Shag Harbor UFO Festival. That was 2 years ago, right? That you were there?
Before pandemic, so more than 2 years, probably
Okay.
3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they it's hard to keep track of the time because they've canceled it a little bit because of the pandemic, but they've just announced their attendees for their upcoming festival, which is the 1st and 2nd of October coming. It's a Saturday and Sunday, a weekend long event, and in the past the people who put on the Shag Harbor UFO Festival generally have kept the participants and the guest presenters mainly local, but they would bring the odd person in, like yourself, from the other part of the country to share your expertise. This year, they seem to be ramping it up quite a bit. So I just want to give you the participant list, and I want to hear what you think of them doing this in small town Nova Scotia. So they will have David Marler, podcast hosts from Somewhere in the Skies podcast, Ryan Sprague, Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Rob Swiatek, Nick Pope, Nick Pope, and of course Chris Stiles, who is pretty much the most prominent investigator associated with the Shag Harbor sighting. I don't expect you're going to be traveling down to Shag Harbor for the UFO Festival in 2 months. It's quite a journey from Manitoba, but given a higher profile, I guess, cast of characters presenting here, what do you think of this? Is this ambitious?
I mean, they've set out a major a major speakers list, and if it was in New York or Vancouver or Houston or something like, or California, it would attract, it would be a major coup to have all these people together in one time. I guess the problem with Shag Harbor, it's very much out of the way. It takes hours and hours to get there. Even you fly out to Halifax and drive for quite some time there. It would be for the local Nova Scotia UFO fans. It's going to be fantastic. I mean, if you're in the area at all, for gosh sake, go to this thing. And these are people who you see on some of the TV shows all the time. So for them to come to Canada, first of all, and then to come to Shag Harbor for a UFO festival, that's quite significant. So if you're in the area, I go.
Yeah.
Go.
I got another one for you. This is a bit of, I don't know if it's Canadian UFO news, but for me, it's the kind of stuff that just I'm delighted to see happen. Do you know who Ashley McIsaac is? Does that name mean anything to you?
Fiddles.
World famous fiddler, known by many as the best fiddler in the world. Also, a little infamous for being a kind of off the wall character. He's made news around Nova Scotia and Canada for all the right and all the wrong reasons throughout his career.
Exactly. Yeah.
What there's no debate about is the guy is an absolute genius fiddle player, and so that, of course, because of that, he's famous. He is I'll say pretty near lifelong fan of the UFO kind of culture and ideas. He's been on my show in the past where he shared what he believes to be likely a UFO abduction experience, although he's also had several UFO sightings. When he was on the show about a year or so ago, he had told me that he was considering working on music related to his thoughts on aliens and extraterrestrials and UFOs and all this stuff, but he didn't know if it would go anywhere, and it was just kind of a thought he had.
Right.
I just had a listener contact me. They went and saw Ashley perform recently, and what they had sent me was a video of something that he, along with his guitar player, whose name is Mary Beth Carty. I guess in the middle of the concert, they almost like cleared the stage, and the two of them took center stage and performed a song seemingly to the aliens that are going to be watching it. I'm just going to play a little bit of it. It's basically Ashley standing with his arms stretched with a fiddle in his hand in a very welcoming embrace, along with Mary Beth singing to the aliens.
Cool.
The aliens are nice. The aliens are nice. Saucers in the atmosphere just hovering in flight. The aliens are nice. The aliens are nice. The U.S. Army cannons try to shoot them out the sky. The aliens are nice. The aliens are nice. Senators and congressmen gave warnings to deny. The aliens are nice. The aliens are nice. They're not like films from Hollywood, no big bucks movie fights. The aliens are nice.
Think that's a hit single?
Aliens are nice. That's the lyrics, may need a little bit of work, but it has its moments. Yeah.
I'm assuming that there's like a big fiddle solo that's just about to really change the scope of that song. But I think it's cool that they did that. I like if you go to an Ashley McIsaac show, that is probably one of the least bizarre kind of moments that will happen during it.
Right.
Other than the Shag Harbor participants being announced, Ashley McIsaac blowing minds at the show in a UFO related way. Can you think of any other Canadian news stories related to UFOs in the last couple of weeks?
Oh, Canadian news stories about UFOs.
I haven't seen any art. Generally, if there's something that's going on, you'll see an article getting shared around. I can't think of any articles that I would have come across recently.
Yeah, I can't either. The politicians, after a bit of a flurry, quieted down. However, and here's something for your viewers, is that the Canadian politician who came out publicly in the parliamentary committee about the Canadian government should be investigating UAPs a little bit more. He was scheduled originally to be at my book launch on the 8th, but he unfortunately can't come, but he's going to be releasing a statement, and it's going to be released at the book launch.
Oh, cool.
So there will be some information from a Canadian politician about UFOs and UAPs at my book launch.
That is fantastic. So I got to ask you rub elbows with this person or something? I know you're kind of in some ways in bed with the Canadian government's investigations into UFOs. How deep does it go? Are you connected to politics?
Well, actually, what happened was this guy, his name is Larry Maguire, and he's a member of Parliament, Conservative Party. And he actually reached out to me in preparation for his making these statements in Parliament, asking for information about UFOs. And so I did privately brief him on the current status of UFOs and the history of stuff that's been going on in my own involvement. Mm-hmm. And since then, he and his team have reached out to me a few more times. And there have been a few other politicians who have come forward. So I have, continued to be involved and hear from some of the politicians interested in the UFO phenomenon in Canada. There's no question that their interest is related and certainly spinning out in some ways because of what's going on in the States regarding Congress and a possible congressional investigation and the task force and this new all-domain anomaly resolution office that it's called now. Not sure what that's going to turn into or what materials we're going to find out, but people seem pretty keen about it. But it's spilled over into Canada, even though, as I've mentioned several times and have documented in my books, Canada actually investigated and did a lot more research that we have public access to and information about than the United States.
Interesting. Well, we'll see where that goes, and I'll look forward to hearing this statement at your book launch. That's a great bonus to have. We're going to a book launch, and the Canadian government is going to indirectly comment on UFOs while we're there.
Yeah,
as an opening act.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to the UFO sighting. So
Yeah.
what I have in front of me here spans the reports that I was given permission to share publicly from the end of June until about 2 days ago. So there's a month and a half roughly of reports, and these are just the ones that I was given permission to share. So I'll go through them. I'll kind of read where it took place, when, and the description they sent to me. I'll do my best to not edit what they've said, with the exception of just making it easier to understand if their text is a little scattered. So
Okay.
First one we have here is from Jack in London, Ontario. I believe this is among the more recent sightings. This is the 29th of July, mid-afternoon. He said between 1 and 1:30 p.m., again in London, Ontario. He said, I happened to be looking up into the sky above my home, and I saw 3 pure white boomerang-shaped objects extremely high in the blue sky. They were, and use air quotes, use quotations, they were flying with the 2 outer tips of the boomerang in front, not the center point in front as one would assume. They were in the same area together, traveling in a southerly direction at what looked like a fast rate of speed. One of them was lower and in the middle of the outer 2. Then the middle one sped off even faster, and they all disappeared out of sight. So I guess the way I'm understanding it is like a boomerang, but rather than kind of the curved part facing forward as it's flying, it was kind of like the opposite direction, or the opposite kind of shape. So it's almost like a U-shaped thing moving through the sky. And it's that's a midday sighting, so that's a bit unique.
Yeah. The one thing that comes to mind are pelicans. And I'm not sure if they're common in London, but I can tell you that I was giving a presentation to a nature sanctuary here in Manitoba at the beginning of June. Beginning of June. And I was talking with one of the nature conservatists, and there happened to have been a UFO sighting at this particular nature sanctuary that I did document in one of my earlier books. And he said, we've been thinking about this and we're talking about it. And he says, one of the things that this particular nature sanctuary is known for is pelicans. And when they rise up, they do the forward V with their wings, and if they're seen at the wrong angle, it looks like these boomerang type things, and they would appear white in a daytime sky.
Interesting.
If it's not that, and it may, I'm not minimalizing it, brushing it off, debunking it as pelicans, but if I had to quickly make an evaluation and come up with a possible explanation, that would be one thing that we'd have to look at.
Now, to play kind of devil's advocate or believer's advocate, if one was to design something to fly through the sky, that shape would seemingly be an illogical way to design something. Like, I often think, like, when people describe what they saw in the sky, I often think, what could it be? Pelicans or whatever. But if it was, let's say, an alien spaceship, why would it, have a little blinking light, or why would it be shaped in that bizarre way? And that just doesn't seem like the shape of any kind of aerial machine, like kind of like a backwards boomerang, so to speak. It seems like it would be counter to the laws of aerodynamics.
But doesn't the Klingon bird of prey face forward though?
Oh, you're right. It was Klingons or pelicans then.
Either Klingons or pelicans, just one or the other.
Let's get to the next one. This is from Graham, a listener in Langley, BC. This is a sighting he's reporting from. Actually, he's reporting something he saw last year on almost a year to the day, August 20th of 2021 in Langley, BC at 10 p.m. at night. He says, I took the dogs out before bed and I saw a light, slow, pulsing object at 1 second intervals in a cloud. I called out to my wife, and an object descended out of a cloud, hovered with a large, round, super bright beam from underneath, and then at a walking pace just above our trees, at an estimate of 100 feet wide, a black triangle craft with a red light on each wingtip and one in the center of its rear, and emitting a low hum. It went over our house, west to east, and then it disappeared. So a blinking light behind a cloud. By the time he calls his wife out and gets a bit closer or gets a better look at it, a large 100-foot wide black triangle craft with red lights passes him from the cloud, from the tree, beyond the tree line. I can. Right. It sounds kind of cinematic when I'm thinking of it and seeing it in my head.
Yeah, that's that sounds pretty cool.
And you say
sure.
you have said before there's like some UFO researchers kind of favor the triangle shaped UFOs, and that's almost like a subgenre of UFO sightings and reports that was, I understand, to be bigger in kind of the late 90s. That was more common.
Yeah, triangles were really big for quite some time. You remember the Belgian triangles of the 80s, that type of thing. And X-Files had a bunch of triangular UFOs back in the 80s and 90s. So yeah, they were really popular. We don't hear very much in terms of triangular UFOs as much anymore. Not sure. Langley, of course, is kind of a suburb of Vancouver, and there's that flight path, the Surrey corridor. So the first thing you have to think of is, searchlight beams and flashing red lights, that type of thing. You think of planes. Not sure what to make of the 100-foot wide black triangle idea, but it's interesting. It's too bad that it's a year later because we can't really check flight paths and stuff.
Yeah, you can't easily. I don't know how this would kind of present itself, but if you're looking, if it's dark out and you're outside, you can't necessarily see the clouds above, but if there were kind of like, I don't know, planes or whatever in the sky, and you would see the light from them, but would the clouds not kind of like the section of the sky that's cloud covered, I wonder if that would appear darker than the section of the sky that isn't cloud covered? And kind of what I'm getting at is this idea of, if there just happened to be a cloud darkening a section of the sky and there were like 3 planes in the sky, or 3 objects or whatever, satellites or whatever the case may be, could that not look like a large black triangle? Because generally when you see these triangle reports, there's a triangle shaped object with like a light on, each corner.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's kind of what I think.
That's certainly one place you'd have to go in terms of trying to investigate to find out if that's possible. It would appear dark in the middle. Again, because Langley's kind of a urban area, there would be some glow from the ground that might illuminate the clouds. It wouldn't necessarily be as dark as all that.
Well, so it could also be the opposite of what I said, is maybe there's just a break in the clouds that is a vague triangle shape.
Yeah.
That just happens to kind of line up with other things in the sky, planes or whatever.
Well, our mind automatically makes 3 lights in the sky into a triangle. I mean, that's how our minds work. And the assumption is that it's on one big object, when in fact 3 lights could just be 3 lights in the sky, 3 stars, 3 objects of some sort.
Yeah, I guess any 3 lights in the sky will make some form of a triangle.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting.
But the movement is the interesting thing. If those 3 lights move together, then that would be something different.
Now, I got something interesting here. I got a 2-part sighting. So I think throughout these 2 messages, we're kind of seeing it all play out for this guy in Spencerville, Ontario. His name is Tim. The first report is from July 7th, 2022, 9:47 a.m. So here's what Tim says. My wife spotted a white, silver, round object well below the morning sun and much lower than small prop aircraft fly. It had a pattern of movement that was similar to a zigzag. It was moving northwest, and it was almost over us as it turned and headed south, no longer in a zigzag pattern, and its speed was a little faster. At the same time this was occurring, a small object that was much larger and at a passenger jet altitude came into view while watching the smaller object. It was heading straight north. It was much slower than a jet and was also bright white and non-reflective. I say non-reflective because there was no shine with the bright sun right there. We observed the first object for about 40 seconds, for about 10 to 40 seconds till both were out of sight. There was absolutely no noise from either object. So we'll start with this. So what I hear from this is it just appears that he sees two objects in the sky. The first one seems to be the most interesting, as it's flying in a zigzag pattern and then changes direction and takes a more direct approach, a direct line out of there. While he's watching that, another object seems to pass through.
Zips by, yeah. That's probably coincidental to have both objects do that. The first one, not sure. Metallic balloon, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Something like that. But other than that, I'm not sure.
A metallic balloon could possibly describe some of the zigzagging, right? Because it would be kind of caught in the breeze and just being kind of tossed around in the sky. That makes sense. So that is possible. But whatever it was, it stood out for him enough to write this and send it to me. But it only seemed to get weirder for him the next day, because he sent me a follow-up UFO report. Here's what Tim says the next day, July 8th, 2022, also out of Spencerville, Ontario, at about 10:32 a.m. So he writes to me, yesterday I reported seeing something my wife and I couldn't explain. Today we noticed a black Chinook helicopter flying very low, coming from the direction of where the UFO was last seen yesterday. Maybe it's coincidence, but I've lived here for 12 years and I've never seen a Chinook helicopter here, ever. So the Chinook helicopter, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but that's like the big helicopter that has two propellers. It's kind of like, it almost looks like a military, like cargo kind of helicopter.
Yeah, it's I think it's the one that's actually even, it looks bent even, doesn't it?
Yeah, it would be the kind that like you could carry vehicles in it. I'm not going to say they were carrying a UFO above Spencerville, Ontario, but they possibly could have been.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's possible.
It's likely. Would you say likely
that it was carrying a UFO?
Yeah. Something less than likely.
Not going to go as far as likely.
Something between possible and extremely likely.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's interesting that that's happened to him, and I've seen a lot of UFO kind of reports that involve seeing helicopters or military aircraft zipping around. That seems common, and like a common kind of thing to have added to a UFO sighting. I wonder if that is the government is chasing UFOs around, or B, the person who sees the UFO just has a heightened kind of sense of awareness and notices a helicopter the next day or whatnot.
Yeah, it certainly is possible. I mean, I've seen the Chinook helicopters once or twice in my life, and I probably wasn't expecting to see them wherever they were. So just because you haven't seen something before, it doesn't mean that it is there for some nefarious reason.
Yeah, and again, like I said in my example, it's the next day. Like that Chinook helicopter probably wouldn't have even stood out to him had he not been looking at the sky because of what he saw the day before.
Yeah, his mindset was changed. And that's interesting, because seeing a UFO sometimes does change one's belief systems and alter perception of their world, make people pay attention more, make them a little more retrospective on their own lives or introspective on their own lives. And it's true, they will sometimes go off on tangents and looking into things that they hadn't really thought of before. It's interesting that UFOs in that sense do tend to spur people's imaginations and thought patterns in ways that are unexpected sometimes.
I got another one for you. I got a lot of these. I could keep going all night, but this one, I think you'll have a lot of ideas for this. This is Terrence from East York, Ontario, June 28th, 8 a.m. So another morning sighting. Mm-hmm. There were 3 round objects floating in the sky. To me, it appeared too high to be balloons, and they moved too fast to be airplanes. One of the objects was bigger. It looked metallic, and it seemed to be glowing red for a bit. It looked like one of the objects flew towards the bigger objects and almost made a circle around it. I saw all 3 objects for about a 5-minute period before they disappeared, seemingly going up towards deeper space. So rather than like going off into the distance, it seemed like it raised.
Hmm.
And I don't know, when I first read this, my first thought was like, like a metallic balloon or just some kind of balloon that the light was reflecting off of, but I don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you've had a couple that have occurred during the day,
Mhm.
and as we know, and we've talked about this before, most UFO sightings are late at night, lights in the sky, and the fact that we're getting things seen during the day is a little odd, a little interesting. The fact that more and more people are reporting things during the day. In fact, it's tough to see things during the day when you think about it, because the sun and
Mhm.
lights in this other light that is reflected from this building or that building, and to see something in a very very bright sky, something would have to stand out quite significantly for someone to pay attention.
Yeah, but well, think of this though. If it's at 8 a.m., the sun is not going to be high up, so you can look at the sky because the sun is going to be way off, on the horizon or whatever. But the light from the sun would be hitting an object. For example, if there's a balloon in the sky is just starting to light up as the sun rises, but the sun can be hitting the balloon at a or whatever it is at an angle that it is much brighter, much like the setting sun can do as well.
Yeah, and we get that more with setting than rising. That's true.
Mm.
Very often, reports of objects, around sunset, do tend to be things lit up by the sun. Because the objects are fairly high, the sun hasn't set on them yet, so they'll appear to be very, very bright in a less bright sky.
Mhm.
So no question that the same can occur in a sunrise.
Yeah. Robert in the chat is knows more about Chinook helicopters than us. He just wrote that you can't store a vehicle inside a Chinook helicopter. You would sling one underneath it, but not inside of it. We're probably thinking of a cargo plane like a C-130 or larger. So
Yeah, yeah,
so there was aliens in it as opposed
yeah.
to
The aliens are inside the helicopter. Yeah,
the
that's
UFO
more
is
like
invisible, slung underneath it.
yeah.
All right, we got another one, and then I'm going to play a voice memo. I got someone sent rather than a text version of their report, they emailed me a voice recording, which is great.
Hmm.
This one though is I can only assume it means either. Actually, I'm not going to tell you what I think it is before I
Okay.
read it. So this is Jacob from a place in Quebec that is a French name, LAC Lac Pemig Pemichaangan. It's Pemichaangan. I've never heard of this place.
Okay.
And then he also has Gracefield there. La Pemichanan something.
Gracefield is a place in
Okay.
Quebec, a little town in Quebec.
Let's
yeah.
go with Gracefield, Quebec.
Okay.
This is on June 25th. This is a nighttime sighting from somewhere between 11 and midnight. He says 50 to 100 UFOs are zipping around what I can only guess was a mothership. They seem to be the distance that a satellite would be. And that's initially what I told my friend he was seeing until he insisted I take a closer look. After maybe 30 minutes of some impressive aerial acrobatics, they all stopped in place, got brighter, and stayed still for maybe 5 minutes before blinking out and disappearing.
No idea. No idea whatsoever. I mean, when you see that many objects zipping around together, I first go to birds.
Okay.
But if they stopped and got brighter and then, moved away after that, that doesn't sound like birds.
Well, my initial thought goes to the Starlink, which would be like a series of objects, 50 to 100 UFOs.
But they wouldn't be zipping all over the place.
No, they would be
right?
very like
In fact, there was a really good in fact, I think there was some posted on the UFOs Above Canada, photos and videos of Starlink. What, about a month ago or something like that?
Yeah, you may have even seen mine. I watched. You can go to the website. There's like a Starlink tracker, and I was staying in Cape Breton at my in-laws' house, which is a bit more rural, so the sky's a lot darker and the objects are a lot brighter. But I checked the Starlink tracker, and it was going to be like a low pass the night I was there. And my 9-year-old son and I went out in the backyard and sat around waiting for it to pass, and it was amazing. I have never seen it like I've seen photos and all that, but I've never like sat and watched it pass overhead. And I see why people are so blown away when they catch this. It
Mhm.
did look like it was out of this world because again, it was I don't know how many 50 white dots all in a line, just moving, all together across the sky, and initially I looked at it, I would have thought it was like a shooting star or something, but it wasn't going fast enough and it didn't get brighter or darker. It looked like a huge mothership passing overhead. If I didn't know what
Yeah, and
Starlink was, I would have been calling you.
yeah, and before those 50 separate and spread out,
Mm.
they're kind of bunched together. And when you see them bunched together, you may not even see them, the individual ones. It just looks like like a cigar moving across the sky. And those are when you see that, that's pretty bizarre too.
I'm just gonna hold my phone up. I'm gonna see if you can see it. So this is the video I took. You'll hear my son and I reacting.
Come up here.
That's great.
Oh my goodness.
There's the Starlink. Oh my God, look at it. Look at the UFO.
That's crazy, isn't it? That's the Starlink.
Yeah. Anyway, pretty cool experience to catch it. And anyone who's looking for something amazing in the sky, look up the Starlink schedule, I guess is what I think is what I Googled. But yeah, very, very cool experience. But we've already talked about this before, you and I. The Starlink is the explanation for a lot of UFO sightings that involve a multitude of objects in a line. That's like
In a line.
I guess that's
exactly.
a surefire.
In a line. Yeah, yeah.
Well, let me get to this voicemail here. This is from New Brunswick, is where this had occurred, and it is Mickey that sends this to us. This is a July 23rd report. Hopefully you can hear this good.
Yeah.
So, I am at my workplace right now, but last night at around 10:30 we were at the Back Bay Elementary School in St. George, New Brunswick, and we look up in the sky, we're just stargazing, and we look up in the sky, and there's something just gliding through. Like, it's not leaving any trace of a cloud or anything like that. Like, if you could not see it in the sky, you would not know that something had just passed through. Like, there was no, like, jet clouds going after it or anything like that. It was definitely not a plane or a jet. I don't know, maybe it was a satellite, but I'm a big believer in the paranormal and the supernatural and the thought of life forms being on other planets, and I genuinely believe that what I saw was a saucer or something. Like, it was very flat and round looking. Multiple other people in my town had seen it and shared videos and pictures on their social media. It was just like the most insane experience I've ever had. Like, I called up friends and family and I was telling them what was going on. They probably thought I was crazy, but I genuinely believe that what I saw was a UFO. It was absolutely insane. It was in St. George, New Brunswick.
So she didn't go into much description of what she saw, but in hearing, ooh, yeah,
Round and flat,
yeah, but in hearing her like emotion,
Yeah.
you had talked about how seeing something like this could kind of change the way you view the sky, view life. It definitely hit her.
Yeah, and what it was, did she say June the 26th? What was the
No,
date?
July 23rd. And
July 23rd.
I don't know if you know how, if you have an iPhone, but on a phone, when you film, like take a photo or film a video, it shows
Yeah.
when you did it.
Yeah.
This is the video for my Starlink.
Of course.
So the day just before we played that voice memo, I played you a video of my son and I looking at the Starlink at 10:06 on July 23rd.
Mhm.
Her sighting, I don't think she gives a time. She said it was July 23rd though. Let me see if she says the time at the beginning.
So,
Yeah.
I am at my workplace right now, but last night at around 10:30 we were at the
Yeah.
Oh, did we
So
just
she
solve it?
saw, so she sounds like she saw Starlink, and it was a mystical and almost a religious kind of experience. for her. So she saw something, that has an explanation, but it still had this effect on her. Actually, I sent you something before the show. It was something that was filmed, I think, last night. And I just included a still photo. It was a person who saw a light in the sky off Grand Moran, I think, Grand Main or whatever it is. Yes, that's it. And he zoomed in. Of course, that's why it looks like that. But it was originally just a point of light in the sky that was in the southeast. And he watched it for quite some time, and it seemed to stay for a while and then moved away. But what's interesting is that the discussion, and this was posted on the New Brunswick Facebook page, UFO Facebook page, and some of the discussion from the people that followed were kind of like what the woman from the previous from your voicemail had said. They're trying to contact you. This is clearly evidence that the aliens are up there, and all this sort of stuff. But there's probably a simple explanation for this. This probably was Saturn that he was looking at, because it's in exactly that spot, and that's what happens when you zoom in on a distant light like that. At that particular time, that's what it was. So it has a profound effect, and you have to sort of separate these things. Yes, aliens probably do exist, and it's possible that they could travel, and they might be able to want to communicate to us, and some of us might be able to receive their communications. But a lot of the UFOs that are reported do have explanations that are not aliens. So by explaining some of them, people may think, oh, you're debunking the whole thing and you don't believe anything. Well, no, that's not true. There are still, as we find out from the Canadian UFO survey every year, a small percentage that we can't explain. Like the myriad of lights moving around in the sky and then stopping. I don't know what that was. I don't know what the black triangle in Langley really was. We have possible ideas, but we're not sure what that was. And we do get reports every year of things that we can't explain. But just because the large majority of cases that come to us do seem to have possible explanations, does not mean we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater and there's no such thing as UFOs or anything like that. But it does show that UFOs do elicit emotion in a lot of people. And I've actually, in one of my articles, in the chapter in the Reframing the Debate book, I talk about it as kind of a religious experience, and how UFOs invoke religion in some people who are looking for some meaning in their lives. And some people turn to Christian religion or Muslim religion or whatever. The UFO is a kind of a modern religion, and it's a way of dealing with some of the really awful stuff that's going on in the world. And the fact you can turn on TVs and look through your Twitter feed or doom scroll. That's why it's called doom scrolling. It's really bad out there. And so to turn to the possibility that aliens are out there and are going to be, maybe helping us get through this, or helping us personally get through this, is actually a good thing. It's a way of coping.
Yeah, well, there's been plenty of like UFO themed cults or religious movements, so I'm not surprised. And it's interesting, and I like when you were just describing this particular sighting and showing me the photo of what you thought could likely be or could possibly be Saturn. I like that you go on these Facebook groups, because I feel like it's almost a bit of almost like S&M or something. You're a sucker for punishment. But when I'm just reading the thread underneath it, so they post their photo and describe what they saw. And you come in classic Chris Rutkowski fashion, where you say, it's hard to tell because you're zoomed in. Distant lights expand to these mottled balls when you zoom in. So this was in the southwest. What time was this? And where was the moon? Was it to the left or the right? So you're trying to get to what's going on here. One of the other responses, just to give a sense of how different you are at times from the other people in these groups, another reader responds and says, it's the frequency. It's so obvious that this person was ready to see that. Sorry, It's the frequency. It's so obvious that this person was just ready to see it. Many of us are star seeds here, stuck in human bodies. So I just like that you end up. Well, maybe that's what I love about UFOs and the UFO discussion is there's so many different ways to look at it. So many different people get in here, and I think that everyone involved in it is fascinating in their own unique way. And then when you throw everyone together, there's someone like you who's taking like kind of the logical, science-based nuts and bolts kind of view. There's the mystical, spiritual type people. There are the people who are convinced it's a government conspiracy. And it's almost like there's this fascinating ideological war that surrounds the UFO issue. And
it's a Rorschach test, I suppose, in some ways. And it's not. And again, I've often said that I'm interested in the UFO phenomenon, and by that I mean not just the reports themselves, but the fact that people get invested in sort of a spiritual experience, that the conspiracies, the books, the Facebook pages, the Twitter feeds, the toys, and the fact that it's part of pop culture, and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, we have a major movie in the theaters right now, Jordan Peele's Nope.
Yeah, have you seen it?
I have not seen it yet.
Me neither. I want to go, but my 9-year-old is worried that it'll be too scary, so he won't come with me.
It might be. I heard there's some good boo jumps in there.
Okay.
But there's a major one like that. The other popular movie that's out right now is Prey, which is the 8th Predator movie or something.
I think it's like a prequel or something.
Yeah, but it's based on the fact that that aliens might come to Earth, and these themes are very popular. The second and third Avatar movies are coming out this fall, and the premise is that there's a civilization on a moon of a planet that's circling Alpha Centauri, which is one of the possible scenarios. In fact, there's some speculation that actually might exist. So there's the line between fact and fiction is blurring a little bit, and we're exploring more. And maybe with the Webb Space Telescope, maybe we'll get to see. Like, I know they're going to try and focus on some of the stars that seem to have possibility of life.
As far as the possibility of life, I think it's the probability of life. It's just a matter of, or not even probability. Like, there certainly must be. It's just a matter of us finding it, and we've only looked as close as possible to our own backyard. But it's going to be fascinating when something actually is discovered, in our own solar system or beyond. I hope I'm alive to see the day that NASA announces, like, we have found, life on blank, whatever it is. It's only a matter of time, right?
Yeah. And I think, it's if I was laying money, I would say that the place we're going to discover life first is on Europa, or under the ocean of Europa, a moon of one of the outer planets. Because life evolved in water on Earth, and there's some liquid and possible water on this moon, and there's a good chance that there might be some life in there. Mars seems to have lost a lot of its water. Maybe we'll find a microbe or two on Mars, but I think in terms of life, like jellyfish or something like that, my money is on something further out in the solar system.
Europa is a moon orbiting Jupiter, I believe. But yeah, it's like, so I watched a documentary about life on Earth in kind of extreme environments, and basically the documentary had shown that anywhere on planet Earth where there's water or even just moisture, there is some form of life there. And if that's the case, why not on another planet? Like, I feel like if we can find any other planet that has water or moisture, we're going to find some version of life. And then, like, on Mars, if there's no water there, maybe if science can find a way to find long dead life, maybe we can find some, sign that there was life there. We're just not in the right time to, to catch it. But anyway, I think it's only a matter of time. And like I said, I hope I'm alive to see it, because that'll be an amazing news day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people will go nuts. Like, look what happened to the world when the pandemic hit. Can you imagine when, like, the idea of, the government knows about life and, in space, and they don't want to tell us because we'll freak out. It's like, I often thought that was kind of crazy, but after the last 2 or 3 years, I'm like, man, government, please don't tell us about anything else.
Yeah, wouldn't it be something if the document proving life on Mars and elsewhere in the universe was one of the documents that got flushed down a toilet? I mean, it would be just typical, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Anyway, Chris, you've given me more of your time than I deserve. I wish you all the best with the new book. Where can people who want to find and read Canada's UFOs Declassified, where can they get it?
It's on Amazon, so take a look for Canada's UFOs Declassified on Amazon and pick it up. And let me know what you think. One of the added bonuses, and we're talking about value added here, because this is about government documents. We can talk about government documents, but until you see them, you may not, really know as much about it. So we reproduced 50 government documents in the book, so you can actually look at what we're talking about and what the government really did have to say about UFOs to investigators and RCMP officers and people who reported.
The documents in the book that, like, because you based the book on Canadian of unclassified Canadian government documents relating to UFOs, where it's all unclassified. Is this all like public information that they've revealed, or was any of this got through, like, FOIPOP requests and that sort of thing?
Well, a lot of these were not originally unclassified. Some of these were secret. Some of these were classified at one degree or another. And over the years, they were gradually declassified. Some were declassified after some access to information requests. There's sections there taken from some of the correspondence between government officials, not only in Canada, but in the United States, with individuals in Canada who had UFO experiences. I even have some reports from Project Blue Book and the FBI. There's actually an FBI case in the book as well, just to show some of the reports and some of the experiences that people had, backing them up with the documents. And there's a lot of stuff being speculated now about transmedium UFOs and pieces of metamaterials, and what do the pilots know, and all this sort of stuff. We've actually never seen any of the documents. There's no real evidence. We just heard from so and so told so and so and so told so and so. Well, in the book, I lay out, this is what the evidence is. This documents what there was, including some pieces of UFOs that the Canadian government examined. So there's this documents out there. So rather than just hearing rumors and hearsay and he said and she said, this is what really was going on.
Cool. Well, Chris, I look forward to the next time we chat.
Talk to you soon, Jordan.
Sooner than later.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for joining Chris Rutkowski and I for our discussion. But before we part, I have some thanks. First, a big thanks to Chris for sharing an evening with me and with you, the listeners of Nighttime. A big thanks to Monty Datta for contributing the music for this episode. But the most important thanks of all goes to each one of you listening, as without your interest and your support, Nighttime would be as pointless as it would be impossible. But with that said, keeping the show alive is and has always been an uphill battle. So if you want to help take a bit of weight off the show's back, make sure you're listening on the premium feed. And not only does the premium feed make the show possible, it'll give you more of each topic than you'll find here on the free feed, as I'm adding exclusive content regularly, and I maintain a full collection of back episodes only on the premium feed. So for about the price of a cup of coffee, you can help keep the show alive at patreon.com/nighttimepodcast. And with that said, let me thank the newest subscribers to the premium feed. Andrew, Sarah, and Stylen, thank you for going premium. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show but can't do it financially, you can give me a big hand by sharing this episode on social media and letting some like-minded friends know what we're doing here. If you have any story ideas, if you want to give feedback on the show, or if you'd like to contribute a voice memo to be aired in an upcoming episode, you can do all that and more at nighttimepodcast.com/contact. We hope to hear from you. But until then, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte.